Hello, welcome to Ray-ality TV. I'm Raymond Bakari. Today I'm joined by 2022 Democratic candidate for General Treasurer, Stefan Pryor, who was most recently Rhode Island Secretary of Commerce, serving in that position for 7 years. Mr. Pryor, how are you today?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great, and it's great to have you on.
I'm so pleased to be.
Yep, I'm glad to have you on, and thank you for giving me your time for this interview.
Of course.
First question, it's a general one. Why do you want to be Rhode Island's next General Treasurer?
Because I want to ensure that we keep the economy strong. So the Treasurer's Office is a terrific office. It's a platform we can build upon. The Treasurer's staff are skilled in finance. I want to utilize that skill and utilize the platform as a whole to keep the economy strong. Rhode Island has one of the strongest recoveries in the whole country right now, coming out of COVID, the downturn associated with the pandemic. Moody's has rated us in the top tier of the states, top number 2, in fact, in the country on the strength of our recovery, number 1 in the Northeast. But inflation is up and the stock market is down, and we're headed into these choppy waters. So I want to utilize the office to help with the economy.
And you're running in the Democratic primary against former Central Falls Mayor James Diossa. Man, oh man, I thought the governor's race would be the most interesting out of all of them this year, but this one's holding its own up in terms of getting the interest from the media, whether it's both sides stacking endorsements, one campaign buying out web domains or making Twitter accounts, or even the fiery debates we've had, or some, having the other person not attend. What makes you more qualified or even better prepared for the office than your opponent?
I've had positions in public service where I've had to coordinate the investment of billions of dollars. In contrast with my opponent who has not, I've had to invest billions of dollars at the World Trade Center. I was called into service in Lower Manhattan after September 11, 2001, at the brand new government rebuilding agency, and invested billions of dollars along with my team, invested to bring back the commercial space, to establish the memorial with its waterfalls and the tribute to those that were lost, and in general to bring back revitalization to Lower Manhattan. Also in Rhode Island, as the longest serving top commerce official, I believe in history, I served as Commerce Secretary under 2 governors, Raimondo and McKee, and I'm grateful to them, for 7.5 years until very recently. In that 7.5 years, we invested billions of dollars and resulted in the investment of billions of dollars in private and public dollars to ensure the revitalization of Rhode Island. And we, as I just described, came out of the COVID downturn strong, in part as a result. So that kind of hands-on experience with major investments is what best qualifies me as compared to another candidate.
Looking in at the economy, as treasurer, you'd have a few tools on hand to try and help Rhode Island's economy, like you talked about in your first answer and that last one, as well as making sure it stays stable in these times. Going into specifics, how would you help ensure that Rhode Island's economy stays in good shape?
I think there are a few things that we need to make sure happens. For decades, Raymond, there had not been a real strategy to shift the economy towards the future. We now, though, have done some of the analysis, and we know some of the fields that are extremely promising for Rhode Island. The blue economy, all those things related to the ocean. What can we express that as? Offshore wind. We're the first state in the water with offshore wind turbines, and we're going to do a whole bunch more and help to bring our grid into a clean energy future. Boat building at every scale, including a portion of America's submarine fleet, and everything in between: aquaculture, seafood processing, fisheries. The ocean economy is something that we've excelled at and is part of our future. And in addition, manufacturing. We've excelled at that since Slater Mill, where we helped to invent the American Industrial Revolution. But in recent times, we've even had biopharmaceutical companies like Amgen establish itself and then reinvest, and Rubius with technology out of Cambridge and Boston, Massachusetts. establish its first manufacturing plant in Rhode Island. We can do these things. We need to invest in those places. The Treasurer's Office can help to create the vision, solidify the vision, advance the vision, and help working in concert with the governor and the General Assembly and private sector players attract investment. But there's another very important part of this, Raymond: small business. So during the pandemic, the state managed to stand up lending programs and grant programs for small businesses. That was terrific. We had federal funds for the purpose. I don't think it should be time limited. I think we need a permanent home for small business financing to keep our small businesses, the lifeblood of our economy, strong. I think the Treasurer's Office should be that permanent home, and we should use our expertise in the Treasurer's Office, given the staff's expertise, our relationships with banks and other lenders, to establish more programming of that kind.
While still talking about the economy, this is kind of a controversial topic, and that is whether we are in a recession or not, because the definition that most people have gone by for most of time is 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. That has happened. Others are saying, though, it's not in a recession, like many in your party, including President Biden. A yes or no question: do you think we're in a recession?
I think there's a very good case that we are, but I think the definition may be outmoded. So yes, by old definitions, but no, in terms of the negative effects on the economy, it's more of a mixed bag. And if I can explain a bit more, Raymond, you've already gotten into it. Yes, we've seen GDP decreases, so GDP momentum down for 2 consecutive quarters. However, we're at a very high employment level, and that's a great thing. Inflation is taking its toll on our economy. That's obviously a very unfavorable thing. So I think what we're experiencing is turbulence in the economy. And the question becomes, what public figures at the federal level, to be sure, but also at the state level, can help us navigate through those choppy waters? And I think in the case of the Treasurer's Office, I am that candidate.
So personally, you don't necessarily think we're in a recession?
I think we might be by now outmoded definitions, but I think that what we're in right now might be hard to categorize.
I want to talk about the Pawtucket soccer stadium for a moment, since it broke ground recently. It's going to cost the taxpayers $60 million. Money that was supposed to be for the housing and other projects around it had to be reshifted back to the stadium because of rising inflation. There may even need to be more tax money put into this. Why should Rhode Islanders be okay with that?
Because it's very important that we keep a project of this scale on track, but we need to do so with taxpayer protections. So, Raymond, there are several things that must happen, in my view, in order for it to be the right thing for this project to proceed. I'm certainly hopeful that it will under these conditions, but these things must happen, in my view, as preconditions. First, we need to ensure that the developer in the fully fleshed out final agreements agrees that the project will not progress with financing from the state until the project is fully constructed. In other words, there's a provision, Raymond, that requires that the physical project reach certificate of occupancy, the C of O status, that means that the project is done, before the state's funding flows. That's very important because taxpayers do not want and ought not have a partially built stadium that's not utilizable, that will never yield new revenue, that will never yield new economic activity, a partially built one, and yet we've paid our dollars out. That should not happen. Number 2, the professional soccer team associated with the Fortuitous Group, the USL soccer team, needs to commit to this venue for 30 years. Now, they've expressed that they will, and there need to be financial penalties if they were to depart. Otherwise, the stadium would not have its main occupant. Now, there'll be a variety of uses. I know there'll be other sports that will occupy it, entertainment, concerts. That is great, but that core use of soccer needs to be there. And third, and perhaps most importantly, Raymond, this gets to your question around why should taxpayer dollars be invested, and how should we judge this as a whole? Perhaps most important, we need to see subsequent development occur, catalyzed in part by the stadium. So we need to see commitments by the private sector organization, Fortuitous and its affiliates, to, on both sides of the river, building out residential units, commercial spaces, including retail and possibly office space, infrastructure, including parking, all in support of the development. These are the features, especially the residential and commercial features, that will yield tax dollars and that will make the entire endeavor worthwhile financially and in terms of economic vibrancy for Pawtucket, the Blackstone Valley, and Rhode Island. So we've got to see those things in place before the project should proceed. And I think everyone intends that. We just need to make sure that all of the agreements get fully fleshed out, ironed out, and executed.
As this has been going on with the stadium and the negotiations and the planning, I've heard two things. One, that it was supposed to pay for itself, but it doesn't look like it's going to. And two, comparisons to 38 Studios. So focusing on that comparison, since that was very, it's a very controversial topic in Rhode Island, how that went about. What are your thoughts on the comparisons between this project and 38 Studios?
I think they are not at all similar. And I think we need to make sure that they don't become similar. And here's what I mean by that. I've already expressed to you the condition number one. Do not pay a single taxpayer dollar into this project until it's fully built. 38 Studios was a scenario where there was a pre-revenue company, a company that had not yet launched, did not yet have a product, that was not yet fully financed, that the state invested in. That was a big mistake that should never be repeated, and we must learn that lesson. And in fact, we have. So this is a project where, in accordance with the condition I've just described, that is in the preliminary documents and must be fully fleshed out and executed, our dollars should only flow upon the completion of the project or certificate of occupancy. That's one example of the taxpayer protections that demonstrate that we've more than learned our lesson. We've developed some of the smarter policies anywhere as to how to conduct economic development. On the pay for itself feature, almost no stadium anywhere unto itself pays for itself, not through the sales tax on beer, popcorn, hot dogs. That's not how you can get a stadium to pay for itself. It's the subsequent development, the affiliated development, the catalyzed economic activity, which is why I made that third point about the necessity of the developer committing to the subsequent phase of development.
Moving on to COLAs, because that's another relevant topic to this office. People on pensions, I should say, for those watching, COLAs is cost of living adjustment for retirees. People on pensions in Rhode Island haven't had COLAs in years. For those watching, that's what the cost of living adjustment is. They will resume when the pension plan is 80% funded, which should take about an estimated 10 years, last I checked. How would you go about taking on this issue? Should we wait until it hits 80%, maybe try to do a stipend, make the process quicker? How would you go about this?
Aim to make the process quicker. So I believe in structural solutions that enable the fund to accelerate and result in more benefits sooner if the conditions warrant it. What we need at the helm in the treasurer's office is someone who's accustomed to managing billions of dollars and who's going to take the kind of analytical approach that I will. And here's what I mean by that, Raymond. Recent treasurers have done a really very good job of stabilizing the fund and even ensuring significant fund growth. But we're only at about 58% fund coverage, 58% funded status. We need to get up to 80%. And you're right, it's about 2031 where that's anticipated to happen. I'd like to see us accelerate. Now, if we are in fact headed into a recession, by anyone's definition of recession, then it may be more challenging. So our goal may be to just stabilize the pension fund and not experience losses. It's estimated that recently the fund has experienced loss, maybe $1 billion worth of loss in the recent increment. So we need to be very careful in achieving stability and managing that fund. But if we can get into a positive momentum economic stretch, and if we can grow the fund through wise strategic investment, then we can get to the goals faster and we can restore benefits faster. And what I'd like to do is look at the decades of commitments to fund managers, to those who invest our dollars, as the stewards of the pension fund, investigate, analyze, scrutinize every subcomponent of the pension fund, and make sure that if something is underperforming, not just relative to the portfolio that we have, that's one important criterion, but underperforming compared to other management, instances of management in other pension funds where that same manager may be doing its work. So how are they benchmarking against other jurisdictions where they're working? Let's look at that entire analysis and decide who's overperforming, who's underperforming, where might we make greater investments to achieve greater gains, and try to get there faster and do so responsibly, not sacrificing our principles as to investment. And let's see if we can, in fact, accelerate that calendar.
That isn't the only pension issue happening in Rhode Island. You're a resident of Providence, so you probably know about the ticking time bomb that is Providence's pension system. This isn't something that you would directly be able to affect, but you can provide guidance, and I'm pretty sure this would be on your radar. What guidance would you offer the city if elected treasurer on their pension issues?
This is one of those scenarios where you need to know everything about the subject in order to make a firm recommendation. So what I would do to get to that level of information once in the treasurer's seat in that office is I would work with the new mayor, we're going to have a new mayor of Providence, and get into the finest level of detail, the highest level of depth on the state of play in the Providence Pension Fund. We will know whether or not the city exercises its bond issuance authority for the purpose of populating the fund with new dollars from a bond authorized by the General Assembly and affirmed by the electorate. We'll see whether they decide to do it, and we'll look at the conditions as they stand. I will, as treasurer, assign treasury staff, state treasury staff, to advising Providence, and not only Providence, but other municipalities with unstable or otherwise struggling funds. I will assign staff in a unit of the Treasury with the task of getting all the way inside the dynamics of and the data regarding the Providence Fund and these other funds, and offer our advice. But until then, you can't do it just on a surface analysis. That's what I would do, though, ensure that there are professionals on the case whose job it is to get all the way inside it and make recommendations to the municipality. And then again, work in partnership with the Providence mayor to bring forward solutions.
I want to ask you about a specific initiative that Treasurer Magaziner had put in place that I also asked your opponent about, and that's the BankLocal initiative. Where do you stand on it?
Oh, it's a great initiative. So BankLocal dovetails with some of the points that I made earlier about the importance of small businesses and the importance of offering financing to small businesses. BankLocal works in a manner that's highly advantageous, where the Treasury makes bank deposits in accordance with loans that are going out the door for certified or those small businesses determined to be legitimate small businesses in the Rhode Island environment. Excellent. I'd like to do several things. I'd like to work with banks, community lenders, credit unions, expand even further to more lenders that are in more corners of our state, connected to more communities in our state. I'd like to prioritize minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, those businesses that typically have the greatest barriers to lending, the least access to capital. I'd like to prioritize them, and I'd like to make sure that there are capital pools available through these partnerships that can get even more dollars out the door with appropriate underwriting. There needs to be a professional review process for loan making, and the loan administration should be through professional lenders in the community, banks, credit unions, community lenders. But I know we can do it because we did it during the pandemic. we got more dollars out on the street. So I want to build upon Treasurer Magaziner's initiative and have even more happening. Yes, continuing the precedent of bank deposits following lending, but also putting more loan capital on the street, making more of it available, and ensuring that communities coming from behind have the greatest prioritization.
These next two are just some quick political ones. We are T-minus 29 days until that September primary. We're filming this on August 15th, a Monday. You'll be on the same ballot as that famous governor primary. Who do you plan to support for governor on that same ballot you're on?
I'm not supporting or endorsing in anyone else's race because I want to ensure that whoever wins as treasurer, I'm well positioned to work with him or her to carry out the duties of the treasurer and to work closely in collaboration with the new governor or the re-elected governor, whoever he or she may be, to strengthen the economy. We are, whatever definitions we adhere to regarding recession or downturn, we are in a very complex moment in time. Economic uncertainty has arrived. So we need to work closely as the top elected officials in the state to manage that economy. So I want to be prepared for that. And quite frankly, also, I'm just focused on my race and ensuring that we succeed.
Have you at least decided who you would pick in that ballot?
I'm not going to get into it any further than what I just expressed, but that was a very nice try.
Well, you are a Providence resident, and there's another election that you'll also be able to cast a vote for. I feel like that you might be on the same boat for this one, but I'll ask it anyways. Same for the Providence
answer. I look
race.
forward to working with the new mayor, whoever he or she may be.
My final question, this is a non-political topic, so
Yes.
it might be able to get a decisive answer.
Yes.
In your opinion, what do you think Rhode Island is best known for?
You know, it best known for, assuming that what you mean is outside of our borders, I think we are perhaps best known as a fantastic tourist destination. It's our beaches. It's also our urban centers, which are thriving and full of arts and culture, including water, fire. And then, of course, there's Newport Jazz and Folk. And there's so many examples across different cultural communities within our state. So I think probably for tourism, but I'll say this, Raymond, I think we ought to aspire for our state to become known as the economic comeback state. You know, traditionally, we have been first in, last out of economic downturns. We were a laggard state, taking much too long to emerge from the Great Recession. Coming out of the COVID-related downturn, we are leading the way for the Northeast and indeed for the whole country. According to Moody's, last time I checked, we were second in the country for our economic recovery and first in the Northeast, and we've been first in the Northeast for many, many, many months. And that's a very good sign. So I think we should work on our reputation outside of our borders as the very well-established now, strong recovering state. And we should do so by promoting that fact, but also by ensuring that our economy stays strong. We need strong leadership to do that. We need sound economic policy to do that. That's what I hope to contribute to.
That's very true with the tourism part of that answer. I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. And there is a lot of potential for the state to grow. We just only time will tell. Mr. Pryor, I want to thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure of mine to have you on the show.
Raymond, the pleasure has been mine. Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching this episode of Ray-ality TV. If you want to see future episodes as soon as they're posted on this channel, please click the subscribe button down below and the post notification bell icon to the right of it. I'm Raymond Bakari, and I'll see you on the next episode.